This title is presented to you by Soundlibra.com. For more audiobooks like this, click the link in the description or visit our website at Soundlibra.com. Welcome to Think Original. Today, we ignite the spark of originality.
And we're so excited you're joining us for this journey. Just a quick heads up before we get started. While we're discussing mental wellness and habits, this isn't medical or psychological advice, so be sure to consult a professional for your specific health needs.
That's an important note. Now, this is episode 1 of 12, and we're diving right into what it means to break conventional patterns every single day. In a world that's constantly shifting, staying stuck in old ways of thinking is like trying to navigate a superhighway with a horse and buggy. It just doesn't work.
That's a great way to put it, Alex. So, for our listeners who might be thinking, I'm not a creative person, what's the first thing we want to tell them?
We want to tell them that originality isn't some rare gift bestowed upon a select few. It's an innate human capacity. Every single one of us is born with the ability to think differently, to imagine, to create. Think about how children explore the world. They ask endless questions, they try things without fear of failure, and they don't worry about what's normal.
They just do. And they see things with fresh eyes. So, if we all have it, why does it feel like so many of us lose it as we grow up?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Societal norms, education systems, workplace pressures, they all tend to nudge us towards conformity. We learn to follow instructions, to fit in, to do things the way they've always been done. We develop what we call default settings for how we think and act.
Default settings. That makes sense. Like when you get a new phone and it comes with all these pre-installed apps and settings you might not even need, but they're there by default.
Precisely. And our minds develop these mental default settings for everything. How we approach a problem, how we interact with others, even how we spend our free time. We often operate on autopilot without even realizing it.
So, the first step to becoming more original is to become aware of these default settings?
You've hit the nail on the head, Lisa. It's about observation. For this first episode, our challenge to you, our listener, is simple. Start noticing your own defaults. Pay attention to your daily routines. What do you do first thing in the morning? How do you commute to work? What do you eat for lunch? What kinds of conversations do you tend to have?
It sounds so basic, but I can already see how just observing could be powerful. It's like shining a light into the corners of your own habits.
Exactly. And it's not about judgment. It's purely about awareness. For example, if your default response to a challenging situation is to feel overwhelmed and give up, just notice that. Don't try to change it yet. Just acknowledge, okay, this is my current default reaction.
And this awareness is the spark you mentioned at the beginning?
It is. Because once you see the default, you can begin to question it. You can start to ask, is this the only way to do this? Is this the best way to do this? What might happen if I tried something different? This is where the what if begins.
So, it's not about being a revolutionary overnight. It's about small, intentional acts of noticing and questioning our everyday patterns.
Absolutely. Think about it. If you always take the same route to work, you might miss a fantastic new coffee shop or a shortcut that saves you time. Your mind, operating on its default route, keeps you confined to the familiar. But by simply observing and questioning, you open yourself up to new possibilities.
I'm already thinking about my morning routine. I always pour my coffee into the same mug, in the same way. What if I tried a different mug? What if I made tea instead? It sounds trivial, but I can see how it can lead to bigger shifts.
It absolutely does. Each time you deliberately step outside a default, you're flexing that originality muscle. You're telling your brain, hey, there's more than one way to do this. We're not asking you to completely overhaul your life in week 1. We're asking you to start observing.
And this process is something we can do in any area of our lives, right? Whether it's at work, at home, in our hobbies.
Anywhere and everywhere. Consider problem solving. If you're faced with a work challenge, what's your go-to approach? Do you immediately seek advice from a senior colleague? Do you dive into research? Do you brainstorm with your team? Identifying these approaches is the first step to unlocking more creative solutions.
It's almost like inventorying your mental toolbox. You need to know what tools you have before you can decide if you need new ones.
That's a fantastic analogy, Lisa. And the more you practice this observation, the more sensitive you become to your own mental habits and assumptions. You start to see patterns you never noticed before. You might realize you're consistently avoiding certain types of tasks, or that you tend to agree with the majority opinion without really thinking it through.
And this habit of questioning isn't about being negative or cynical, is it? It's about being curious and open.
Exactly. It's about a healthy skepticism, a desire to understand deeply rather than just accepting things at face value. It's the foundation of critical thinking, which is itself a cornerstone of originality. When you stop blindly following, you create space for genuine innovation.
So, to recap what we've covered today, originality is an innate human capacity that can be dimmed by societal pressures and our own developed default settings. The first, crucial step to reclaiming it is to become an observer of our own habits and thought processes. We need to notice our routines, our default reactions, and our default ways of approaching tasks.
And the goal isn't to change these defaults immediately, but simply to become aware of them. This awareness creates the opportunity to ask, what if? And that, my friends, is the spark of originality igniting. It's a process of gently questioning the familiar to make room for the new.
So, your homework for this week is to notice. Notice your defaults. Don't try to fix anything, just observe. What do you do? Why do you do it? Is there another way?
And as you do this, you'll start to see your own mind in a new light. You'll begin to understand the patterns that might be holding you back from your most original ideas. This is just the beginning, of course. In our next episode, we'll dive deeper into unmasking these default settings and exploring how they were formed.
I'm already excited to learn more. It's fascinating to think about how much of our lives we live on autopilot.
Indeed. So, for today, thank you for joining us on Think Original. Keep observing and keep that spark alive. Next episode, unmasking your default settings. Welcome back to Think Original. Last time, we explored where unique ideas originate. Now, let's unmask your default thinking patterns.
Default settings, like the autopilot for our brains. It sounds simple, but it impacts everything we do.
Exactly. When you face a problem or a familiar task, what's your go-to approach? Those are your default settings, the unconscious habits and thoughts we've built over time.
They're helpful, right? They make us efficient, like not having to figure out how to brush our teeth each morning.
Absolutely. Defaults save mental energy, but they can also trap us in mental ruts, preventing us from seeing better solutions or new possibilities.
Mental ruts, like being stuck on a well-worn path. You keep moving, but you're not going anywhere new.
Precisely. These ruts are formed by our habits, our learning, our environment. If you always learn something a certain way, that becomes your default.
So, how do we even see these invisible defaults?
Through awareness, we need to observe our thoughts and actions without judgment. Our tool for this episode is the Why Challenge.
A challenge. I'm ready.
Choose a routine action or decision today. It could be your commute, your grocery list, your coffee order, or how you reply to an email.
Okay, let's say making my morning coffee.
Great. Now, ask yourself, why do I do this? Then ask why, 5 times to your own answers, digging deeper each time.
So, if I make coffee a certain way because I like the taste, I ask, why does that taste appeal to me? Maybe it's because it's familiar and comforting. Then, why is familiarity comforting?
You're getting it. You're uncovering the assumptions behind your actions. Often, the reasons are just habit, or what you believe is the only way.
This is powerful. Why do I check emails first thing? Because I feel I need to know what's happening. Why do I need to know? Because I think it helps me prioritize. Why do I think that? Because that's how I was taught to manage time.
See, you're uncovering a default. Asking why challenges that assumption. Maybe a different start to the day allows for focused work before diving into emails.
And it's important to do this without judging ourselves, right?
Crucially, approach the why challenge with curiosity, like a detective exploring your own mind. This awareness is the first step to reevaluation and originality.
So, to summarize, our default settings are efficient mental shortcuts that can lead to ruts. The why challenge helps us notice these defaults by repeatedly asking why to understand underlying reasons and assumptions.
Exactly. This applies to everyday life, making us more intentional. Understanding why you do something lets you choose if it's still the best way.
It feels like understanding our starting point. If we don't know our default settings, how can we create something truly new?
You nailed it. It's like wanting to redecorate a room without understanding the existing furniture and why it's placed there. You need to know what you have before you can decide what to change.
So, our listeners should try the why challenge this week on a few daily routines and simply observe what they discover.
That's the plan. This practice makes you more aware of your own patterns and, by extension, the common defaults many people share. Stepping outside those commonalities is where originality thrives.
It's like expanding your vision. Once you see the ruts, you can also see the open fields nearby.
Precisely. And that leads perfectly into our next episode, where we'll explore the incredible power of asking, what if? A question that directly challenges our defaults and sparks innovation.
Fantastic. So, remember to be a curious observer of your own mind this week. Ask those whys and gently uncover your mental default settings.
This isn't about finding faults, it's about finding freedom. The freedom to choose your path.
This has been episode 2 of Think Original, Unmasking Your Default Settings.
Next episode, the power of what if. Welcome back. Last time, we delved into understanding our own default thinking patterns. Now, let's unleash a tool that can shatter those patterns and reveal new possibilities. The power of what if.
What if? It sounds so simple, doesn't it? Almost childlike. But I'm sensing there's a powerful undercurrent to this.
Exactly, Lisa. Childlike curiosity is often the birthplace of ingenuity. The what if question is the most direct way to tap into that. It's a fundamental engine of creativity. We use it to explore hypothetical scenarios, to challenge the status quo, and to open doors that we didn't even realize were closed.
So, it's about imagining alternatives to what already exists?
Precisely. Instead of accepting things as they are, we ask, what if this were different? Think about it. We take so many things for granted. The way we commute, the way we cook, the way we communicate. Every single invention, every single piece of art, every single scientific breakthrough started with someone asking, what if?
I can see that. For instance, people took for granted that travel had to be slow and tethered to the ground. Then someone asked, what if humans could fly? And eventually we got airplanes.
That's a perfect example. Or consider the simple act of writing. For centuries, people wrote by hand. Those who explored new methods asked, what if we could type faster and make multiple copies easily? That questioning led to the typewriter and then the computer keyboard. Each innovation was born from a what-if scenario.
It makes me wonder, how do we actually use this what if question effectively? Is it just random brainstorming?
It's more than random, though randomness can certainly play a part. It's about intentional exploration. You can apply what if to any aspect of your life or work. Let's say you're facing a problem at work. Instead of just thinking about the direct solutions, ask yourself, what if the usual rules didn't apply here? Or what if my target audience was completely different? How would I approach this then?
That's interesting. So, you're not just asking, what if this problem was solved, but rather, what if the context or the constraints were different?
Exactly. By changing the conditions of your question, you force your mind to consider new angles. Consider the invention of the post-it note, a classic case study. The initial innovation was a weak adhesive that wasn't strong enough for its intended purpose. But instead of discarding it, someone asked, what if this failed adhesive could be useful for something else? They brainstormed and realized it was perfect for a temporary bookmark that wouldn't damage pages. That's the what if in action. A seemingly useless outcome becomes a groundbreaking invention by reframing its potential.
So, it's about embracing unexpected outcomes and seeing them as opportunities rather than failures.
Precisely. And it's not just about grand inventions. You can use this in your everyday life. For example, what if I tried a completely different route to work today? You might discover a new favorite coffee shop or a shortcut you never knew existed. What if I spent 10 minutes each day learning a new word? Over time, your vocabulary expands significantly. What if I try to explain this complex topic to a 5-year-old? This forces you to simplify and crystallize your understanding.
That last one is brilliant. When you have to simplify something drastically, you really have to grasp the core of it. It's like distilling a complex idea down to its essence.
It is, and it encourages a beginner's mind, which is crucial for originality. When you ask, what if, you're implicitly acknowledging that you don't know everything and that there might be a better way to do things. This humility is a powerful catalyst for innovation.
How do we make sure we're asking productive what if questions rather than just getting lost in fantastical, impossible scenarios?
That's a great point. While a little bit of fantastical thinking can be good, it's helpful to ground your what if questions in reality, even if you're bending those realities. You can start by asking questions that relate to your current situation or challenge. For example, if you're trying to improve a product, ask, what if our customers had twice as much time to use this product? Or what if our product had to work in extreme weather conditions? These are hypothetical, but they're rooted in a real-world context.
So, the what if doesn't have to be completely detached from the actual problem or task at hand. It can be a tool to explore variations of that problem or task.
Exactly. And even if a what if scenario seems absurd at first, don't dismiss it too quickly. Sometimes the wildest ideas are the ones that, with a bit of refinement, lead to the most original solutions. Think about the internet itself. In its early conceptual stages, it was a pretty wild what if, connecting machines across vast distances. It would have seemed fantastical to many.
It sounds like a muscle we need to exercise. The more we ask, what if, the easier it becomes, and the more readily our minds will jump to these possibilities.
That's absolutely right. It becomes a habit, and it's a habit that can transform how you approach challenges. Instead of feeling stuck, you'll start seeing possibilities everywhere. You'll become someone who naturally explores alternatives and question assumptions. Remember that idea of unmasking default settings from our last episode? What if is the ultimate tool for doing just that? It challenges those defaults and forces you to see the underlying assumptions.
So, to recap for our listeners, the what if question is a fundamental creative tool. It involves intentionally exploring hypothetical scenarios to challenge the status quo and uncover new possibilities. We can apply it to problems, everyday situations, or even abstract concepts. By altering the context or constraints of our questions, we can unlock novel perspectives. And importantly, even seemingly wild ideas can lead to innovation when paired with a grounded approach and a willingness to explore.
You've got it. It's about shifting from this is how it is to what if it could be otherwise. This simple shift in perspective is the spark that ignites originality. Start practicing it today. Ask what if about something you encounter and see where it takes you.
A powerful tool indeed. It's like unlocking a secret level of thinking.
That's a fantastic way to put it. And next time, we're going to explore how embracing constraints, sometimes the very things that seem to limit us, can actually be a powerful catalyst for creativity. Next episode, embracing creative constraints. Welcome back. Last time, we explored the power of asking, what if, to spark new ideas. Now, let's talk about a concept that might seem backward, embracing creative constraints.
It feels counterintuitive, doesn't it? We often think creativity needs complete freedom. But today, we'll argue that limitations can be powerful tools for invention.
Exactly. An infinite playground with no rules can be overwhelming. When you have a specific challenge, a box to work within, your mind is forced to find clever solutions.
So, it's like setting boundaries to channel your energy. The constraint focuses your attention, forcing you to be more deliberate and resourceful.
Precisely. History is filled with examples of incredible creativity blossoming under strict limitations. Think about early filmmaking. They had black and white, no sound, and limited special effects. But look at the stories they told, the emotional depth they achieved.
That's a great example. Or consider poets. They work within the constraints of rhythm, rhyme, and meter. Yet, those very structures allow for profound expression.
Absolutely. It's about working within the lines to create something unique. A helpful framework is Edward de Bono's Six Thinking Hats. While not solely about constraints, it emphasizes different thinking modes. You can easily see how applied constraints can direct one of those hats. For instance, the green hat is for creativity. If you apply a constraint like, how can we achieve this using only existing resources? You're channeling green hat thinking into a specific, actionable direction.
That makes sense. So, we're talking about deliberate limitations that serve a purpose. How can we intentionally use these creative constraints in our own lives?
A fantastic question. First, recognize that constraints can be external, imposed by circumstances, deadlines, or physical limitations, or internal. You choose to set them. For yourself, you might decide, I will write a 1,000-word story using only dialogue, or I will design this product using only recycled materials.
Those self imposed constraints are powerful because you're actively choosing the challenge, which increases your buy in and motivation.
Exactly. Then, reframe the constraint. Instead of seeing it as a roadblock, view it as a stepping stone. Ask yourself, how can this limitation help me? For example, if a budget is tight, instead of panicking, ask, how can this tight budget force me to be more innovative with fewer resources? This shift in perspective is crucial.
So, it's about changing your mindset from, I can't do this because, to I can do this. And here's how this challenge will make it better.
You've got it. Another powerful technique is to break down the problem. When a large constraint feels insurmountable, dissect it into smaller, more manageable parts. Then apply your creative thinking to each individual part. This is similar to deconstructing problems with first principles, but here, the principles themselves are often born from the constraint.
That's a helpful way to approach it. It makes the seemingly impossible feel achievable.
And constraints can push us to become more efficient. When you have limited time or resources, you learn to prioritize what's truly important and cut out the extraneous. This leads to more focused and impactful output. Think of the early internet. Developers had to make sites load quickly on slow dial-up connections. That constraint led to incredibly efficient design and coding practices that we still benefit from today.
That's a perfect example of how a limitation can drive innovation and create better long term solutions.
Indeed. Now, famous examples from art and design. Dr. Seuss famously wrote Green Eggs and Ham using only 50 different words. Can you imagine the creativity required to tell a story with such limited vocabulary? Yet, it's one of the most beloved children's books of all time. That constraint made him incredibly inventive with wordplay and sentence structure.
Wow, 50 words. That's a serious challenge. It just goes to show that the absence of certain tools or options can actually enhance the creative process rather than hinder it.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about improvisational theater. Improv performers thrive on constraints. A common starting point is a suggestion from the audience, like a place or an object. Then, the performers have to build an entire scene, characters, and story from that single, often quirky, prompt. They have to be incredibly agile and inventive on the spot.
It's fascinating how the most creative minds often find their best work when they're not given an open invitation to do anything, but rather a specific problem to solve.
It truly is. So, to recap what we've discussed today, embracing creative constraints isn't about limiting your potential. It's about focusing your energy. Constraints can be external or self-imposed, and the key is to reframe them as opportunities. By breaking down problems and actively seeking ingenious solutions within those boundaries, we can unlock a deeper level of resourcefulness and inventiveness. Like Dr. Seuss with his 50 words, or improv actors on a stage, limitations can be the fertile ground where groundbreaking ideas take root.
So, instead of fearing limitations, we should actively seek them out and use them as a catalyst for our originality. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes having less can actually help us achieve more.
Precisely. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Think Original. Last time, we explored how embracing creative constraints can actually spark surprising new ideas. Today, we're diving into something equally vital, the art of diverse inputs.
I'm really excited about this one, Alex. It feels like the natural next step. We've spent time looking inward, questioning our own default settings and challenging what if, but how do we actually feed that originality?
Exactly, Lisa. Original thinking, much like a thriving garden, needs diverse nourishment. It doesn't grow in a vacuum. The most groundbreaking ideas often come from a rich cross-pollination of information from unexpected places. Think of it as deliberately expanding your intellectual diet.
An intellectual diet. I like that. So, what does that actually look like? Are we just talking about reading more books?
That's part of it, but it's so much more. It's about actively seeking out perspectives, knowledge, and experiences that are different from your own. This means looking beyond your immediate field of expertise. If you're a coder, maybe you're reading about Renaissance art history. If you're a baker, perhaps you're exploring quantum physics.
That sounds a bit random, honestly. How does learning about quantum physics help me bake a better croissant?
It's not about a direct, one-to-one application, at least not initially. It's about developing new ways of thinking and problem solving. For instance, the principles of interconnectedness in quantum mechanics might subtly influence how you think about the complex interactions of ingredients in your dough. Or understanding the iterative process in scientific research, hypothesis, experiment, refine, can be applied to your baking experiments. You're not trying to become an expert in quantum physics. You're absorbing different frameworks for understanding the world.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So it's about borrowing mental models or approaches from other fields and seeing if they can be applied metaphorically or conceptually to your own work.
Precisely. And it's not just about academic fields. Diverse inputs also come from people with different life experiences, cultural backgrounds, and socioeconomic statuses. Engaging with someone who has a vastly different upbringing than you can expose you to unique viewpoints and assumptions you never knew you had.
That's a really important point. I sometimes find myself gravitating towards people who think similarly to me because it's comfortable. But you're saying that comfort can actually hinder originality.
It absolutely can. Our echo chambers, whether online or in our social circles, reinforce our existing beliefs and perspectives. To be original, we need to intentionally step outside of those. Seek out conversations, articles, or even just observe people who see the world through a lens you don't typically use. It's about challenging your own worldview.
So, how do we practically do this? How do we actively seek these diverse inputs without it feeling like a chore?
One effective method is what I call cross-disciplinary browsing. When you're researching something, don't just stick to the top search results in your field. Deliberately click on links that lead to related but distinct disciplines. Notice the terminology used, the common problems addressed, and how solutions are framed.
That's a great tip. It's about following curiosity down different rabbit holes. What else?
Consider attending conferences or workshops outside your usual domain. If you're a graphic designer, maybe attend a biology conference and see what challenges scientists are facing. You might be surprised by the innovative solutions or metaphors they use that could spark an idea for a design project. Or join a book club that reads across genres.
I love the book club idea. It forces you to engage with something you might not pick up yourself. And it allows for discussion, which is another form of diverse input, right? Hearing how others interpret and react to a text.
Absolutely. Conversations are powerful amplifiers of diverse inputs. Don't be afraid to ask why and how when people explain things to you, especially if their explanation is different for what you expect or understand. Encourage others to share their unique perspectives. Diversifying your inputs gives you a richer palette of what-ifs to play with.
That's right. The more varied the information and perspectives you have, the more fertile the ground for those what if questions. It's like having a bigger toolbox.
Precisely. Think of your mind as a vast library. If all your books are on the same topic, your ability to draw connections and create something new is limited. But if your library contains books on everything from ancient history to modern robotics, from poetry to urban planning, suddenly the potential for original insights explodes.
So much of this feels like it comes down to cultivating a genuine curiosity about the world and about other people's experiences. It's about resisting the urge to stay within our comfortable boundaries.
It is, and it requires a conscious effort, especially in our fast-paced, specialized world. We're often rewarded for deep specialization, which is valuable, but it can also narrow our vision. We need to counterbalance that with breadth of knowledge, breadth of experience, breadth of perspective.
I can see how this relates to what we talked about in episode 2, unmasking your default settings. By exposing yourself to diverse inputs, you naturally start to question those defaults because you see that there are other ways of doing things, other ways of thinking, other ways of being.
Exactly. These concepts build upon each other. Questioning defaults reveals those assumptions. What if allows you to explore alternatives? Constraints can focus your exploration, and diverse inputs provide the raw material and different angles for that exploration.
It's like a symphony. No single instrument can create the richness of the entire orchestra. You need the strings, the brass, the woodwinds, the percussion all playing together, offering their unique sounds.
That's a beautiful analogy, Lisa. The various fields, cultures, and experiences are your instruments, and your mind is the conductor, weaving them into a new and original composition. So, to recap today's episode on the art of diverse inputs, we've discussed that original thinking thrives on varied nourishment, not just from one field, but from different disciplines, cultures, and life experiences. We've explored practical ways to achieve this, like cross-disciplinary browsing, attending varied workshops, and engaging in conversations that challenge our perspectives. The key takeaway? To foster originality, deliberately expand your intellectual diet and embrace the richness that comes from a wide range of inputs. Next episode, we'll be deconstructing problems with first principles.
Can't wait. See you then.
Original. Last time, we explored the art of diverse inputs. Now, let's tackle deconstructing problems with first principles.
First principles. That sounds like getting back to the absolute basics of something.
Exactly. Think of it like being a detective for problems. You break down an issue into its most basic, unquestionable truths, stripping away all assumptions and narratives until you're left with the core components.
So, it's about asking why repeatedly to get to the absolute root?
Precisely. It's a structured way of questioning. Many of us think, by analogy, applying past solutions to new problems. First principles thinking forces us to build solutions from scratch, based on reality.
That makes sense. If we're always comparing to what's already out there, aren't we limiting ourselves?
You've hit the nail on the head. Consider wanting a healthy meal quickly. Your usual analogy might be, I'll order takeout. That's valid, but it's based on meal needed. Takeout is the fastest way.
Okay, so how would first principles apply here? What are the fundamental truths about a healthy meal?
A healthy meal needs to provide essential nutrients, be made from whole ingredients, and be easy to digest. The first principles of quick are minimal preparation, cooking, and cleanup time.
Ah, I see. So, instead of defaulting to takeout, we're looking at core needs, nutrition, whole foods, easy digestion, and time constraints.
Exactly. From those first principles, we can brainstorm solutions we might not have considered. Perhaps a pre-prepped salad kit with quick-cooked chicken, or overnight oats that require no morning prep. These solutions are born from underlying truths, not just repeating a previous pattern.
This is fascinating. It feels like it applies to much bigger problems, too.
Absolutely. Think about Elon Musk and rocket development. Many resigned to high costs, thinking rockets are expensive. That's just how it is. They were thinking by analogy, we've always built rockets this way, and they're expensive.
But Musk didn't accept that.
He didn't. He went to first principles. He asked, what is a rocket fundamentally made of? He broke it down into materials like aluminum, titanium, copper, and carbon fiber. He researched their market price and discovered that the raw materials were only about 2% of the typical cost.
Wow. So the fundamental truth wasn't the inherent cost, but the inefficient manufacturing and supply chain.
Precisely. By deconstructing the problem to its core components, the cost of materials, he saw that the accepted price was a result of a faulty system. This allowed him to reimagine the entire process, leading to SpaceX and significantly lower rocket costs.
That's a powerful example. So how do we actually do this?
It's a skill that can be developed. First, clearly define the problem. Be specific. Second, identify all the assumptions you're making. Write them down.
Just list everything we take for granted?
Yes, if the problem is our team meetings are unproductive, assumptions might be we need to meet daily or everyone needs to speak. Now, challenge each assumption. Ask yourself, is this assumption truly a fundamental requirement or just habit?
So, for we need to meet daily, I'd ask, is it absolutely necessary for my team to function effectively?
Exactly. You'll find many assumptions are just conventions, not immutable laws. Once you've challenged assumptions, identify the fundamental truths. What are the irreducible elements? What must be true for this situation to exist?
This sounds like it could lead to some uncomfortable realizations.
It can, and that's good. Recognizing ingrained narratives and biases is crucial for original thinking. We're looking for what is undeniably true, not what we've been told.
So, to recap, define the problem, challenge assumptions, and identify fundamental truths. What's next?
Once you have those fundamental truths, you can rebuild your understanding and solution from the ground up. You're no longer constrained by old ways of thinking. This is where true innovation happens. Ask, given these truths, what is the absolutely best way to solve this, regardless of current practices?
It's like clearing the slate to build something new. This approach builds on unmasking defaults from episode 2, but gives us a concrete method.
It absolutely does. It's a mindset shift that encourages deep thinking and a willingness to question everything. It's about going beyond the obvious and uncovering the underlying structure. Remember the rocket example. The fundamental truth wasn't the high cost, but the price of raw materials. By focusing on that, a revolution was possible.
So, for our listeners tackling their own challenges, the advice is clear. Get to that core truth. Don't just accept the status quo, or the easiest analogy. Break it down to its building blocks.
Indeed, this method empowers you to move from being a problem solver to a problem dissolver. You can create solutions that are not just effective, but truly innovative. Next episode, the habit of questioning assumptions. Welcome back to Think Original. Last time, we explored how to deconstruct problems using first principles. Today, we're tackling habit number 7, questioning assumptions.
Assumptions. They're like the air we breathe, aren't they? We make them constantly and often don't even realize we're doing it. They guide our decisions, our perceptions, everything.
Exactly, Lisa. And that's precisely why they can be so dangerous to our originality. Assumptions are those beliefs we hold to be true, often without ever having examined them. They're the unstated rules, the givens that shape our understanding of the world. If we never question them, we're essentially operating on autopilot, recycling old ideas and patterns.
So, it's about digging beneath the surface of what we think we know. It sounds simple, but I can already see how challenging it might be. Our brains are wired to create shortcuts and find patterns, and assumptions are a big part of that.
You've hit on a key point. Our brains want to be efficient. Assumptions allow us to process information quickly. But in the pursuit of originality, we need to deliberately break that efficiency when it's limiting us. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to find a new route through a familiar city. If you only ever take the roads you've always taken, you might miss a beautiful scenic byway or a faster, less congested street. Those familiar roads are your assumptions about how to get from point A to point B.
That's a great analogy. So, how do we start questioning these hidden beliefs? It feels a bit like trying to find something you don't even know you've lost.
It's a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice. One of the best starting points is to simply ask why, repeatedly. This is a technique you might recall from our discussion on first principles. When you encounter an idea, a process, or a belief, ask, why is it done this way? Then answer that question and ask why again to your answer. Keep digging, and you'll often uncover the underlying assumptions.
So, if I'm using a particular software program at work and I'm trying to figure out a more efficient way to complete a task, I should ask, why do I do this task this way? And if my answer is, because that's how the program is designed, then I ask, why is the program designed this way?
Precisely. And that, why is the program designed this way? Question might lead you to discover that the design is based on an assumption about user behavior that isn't actually true for you or for a new market you're trying to reach. Or perhaps the original reason for that design choice no longer exists.
That makes sense. It's about moving from how to why and then to why else or why not.
Exactly. Another powerful technique is to consider what if the opposite were true? For any given assumption you identify, deliberately explore the implications if that assumption were false. For example, a common assumption in many industries is that more features equate to better products. So, what if the opposite were true? What if fewer features, a more streamlined, minimalist approach, actually led to a superior product or better user experience?
That's a mind bender. It forces you to rethink what better even means. We often assume more is always better, but that's not necessarily true. Think about the clutter in our lives, or the complexity of some products that end up being harder to use.
Right? And this technique isn't just for product development. It applies to how we structure teams, how we approach marketing, how we organize our personal lives. If you assume collaboration is always best, then ask, what if solitary work was more effective for certain tasks? Or if you assume a traditional career path is the only path to success, ask, what if an unconventional or entrepreneurial path leads to greater fulfillment?
So, questioning assumptions isn't about rejecting everything we know, but about rigorously examining the foundations of our knowledge. It's about seeking out those hidden planks that might be weakening the structure.
That's a fantastic way to put it, Lisa. And it's crucial to remember what we discussed in episode 2 about our default settings. Those default settings are often built on deeply ingrained assumptions. By questioning assumptions, we're essentially debugging our own internal operating system.
It sounds like a mental discipline. Is there a way to make this a more regular habit, rather than just an occasional exercise?
Absolutely. The key is consistency. Try to dedicate a few minutes each day, or perhaps at the beginning of a new project or task, to actively identify and question assumptions. You can even keep a journal specifically for this. When you notice yourself thinking this is just how it is, pause and write it down. Then challenge it. Ask yourself, what assumption am I making here? Is it absolutely true? What if it wasn't?
Assumption journal. I like that. It gives it a tangible form. What are some common types of assumptions we make that we should be on the lookout for?
Good question. Some common ones include assumptions about people, thinking you know what others want or how they will react, without confirmation. For instance, assuming your customers want a product with every bell and whistle, when they really just want something simple and reliable. Another is assumptions about limitations, believing something isn't possible because of external factors like technology, budget, or regulations, without exploring if those limitations are truly fixed. We also make assumptions about causality, assuming that because two things happen together, one must cause the other when there might be a third factor involved or no causal link at all. Finally, beware of assumptions about the past repeating itself, believing that because something happened a certain way in the past, it will always happen that way in the future, ignoring the possibility of change or evolution.
Those are insightful categories. And I can see how easy it is to fall into those traps. With the assumptions about people, one, for example, marketers often make assumptions about target demographics without doing enough research.
Exactly. And when we fall into these traps, our solutions and our ideas become conventional. They fit within the existing paradigm. True originality comes from challenging those paradigms. It's about asking, what if we didn't have to operate within these boundaries? Or what if the people we're serving have needs or desires we haven't even considered?
So, to recap our discussion on questioning assumptions, it's about recognizing that our beliefs aren't always facts and that many of our decisions are guided by unexamined assumptions. We can effectively challenge these by repeatedly asking why and by exploring the implications of what if the opposite were true?
And making this a consistent habit, perhaps by keeping an assumption journal and being aware of common categories of assumptions like those about people, limitations, causality, and the past, will help us uncover those hidden constraints on our thinking. This practice is fundamental to developing a truly original approach to problems and ideas. It's about actively working to see the world not just as it is, but as it could be by dismantling the mental barriers that keep us stuck in the familiar.
It requires a degree of intellectual humility, doesn't it? Being willing to admit that what you think you know might be incomplete or even wrong.
It absolutely does. But that willingness is the gateway to genuine insight and innovation. By systematically questioning our assumptions, we open ourselves up to entirely new possibilities, fostering the creative thinking that leads to breakthrough ideas.
This has been incredibly valuable, Alex. It's a habit that requires conscious effort, but the payoff in terms of originality seems immense.
It truly is. Next episode, we'll explore how to cultivate a beginner's mind, which is another powerful technique for shedding preconceived notions and embracing new perspectives. back to Think Original. Last time, we explored the power of questioning your assumptions. Today, we're diving into a concept crucial for innovation, cultivating a beginner's mind.
A beginner's mind. That sounds a little counterintuitive, doesn't it? We spend so much time trying to become experts, to not be beginners. Why would we want to go back to that?
That's a great question, Lisa. When we become experts, we develop mental shortcuts, established ways of thinking. These are efficient, but they can also blind us. A beginner's mind, or Shoshin in Zen Buddhism, is about approaching every situation, even familiar ones, with the curiosity and openness of someone encountering it for the very first time.
So, it's like deliberately setting aside all your existing knowledge and experience to look at something with fresh eyes?
Exactly. Imagine a seasoned chef who's made the same signature dish 1,000 times. They know every step, but what if they approached making it as if they'd never cooked before? They might notice the subtle aroma of a spice they usually overlook or wonder why that particular ingredient is even there. This fresh perspective can lead to significant improvements or even entirely new ideas.
That makes sense. It's about deprioritizing what you think you know to make space for what you could discover. It connects back to seeking diverse inputs, but with an emphasis on internal processing.
Precisely. When you have a beginner's mind, you're not quick to judge or dismiss. You're open to possibilities. You ask why more often. You're not afraid to look silly or ask what might seem like an obvious question. Think about children. They aren't embarrassed to be wrong. They are constantly learning and discovering.
And we tend to lose that as we get older. We become more self conscious, more aware of what others might think. If we ask a stupid question, we worry about looking ignorant.
That's the biggest hurdle, the fear of appearing foolish. But in the creative process, that fear is a creativity killer. A beginner's mind says there are no stupid questions, only missed opportunities for learning. It allows you to see the familiar with new eyes, to question the status quo, and to find insights where others might see only routine.
How can we practically cultivate this beginner's mind? It feels like a state of being rather than a technique.
It is a state of being, but like any skill, it can be practiced and strengthened. One way is through mindfulness. By paying close attention to the present moment, without judgment, you start to notice details you'd normally filter out. This practice of being present helps quiet the mental chatter of our pre-existing knowledge.
So, if I'm walking a route I take every day, a beginner's mind would encourage me to really look at the buildings, the trees, the people, as if for the first time, rather than just letting my autopilot take over.
Exactly. You might notice a new shop, a different architectural detail, or a bird you've never seen before. These small observations can spark ideas or simply enrich your daily experience. Another technique is to consciously approach problems or tasks as if you were explaining them to someone completely new to the topic.
That's interesting. So, if I'm troubleshooting a computer issue, instead of just going through the steps I usually do, I'd pretend I have to explain each step to my grandmother who's never used a computer. That would force me to re-examine why I'm doing each step, not just how.
You've got it. This forces you to articulate the underlying principles, the why behind the what. In doing so, you might uncover a more efficient method or a root cause you've been overlooking simply because you've always done it a certain way. This is a perfect companion to approaching a problem with first principles thinking.
So, it's about setting aside assumptions, embracing curiosity, and being willing to be a learner again, even in areas where we consider ourselves experts.
Yes, it's also about resisting the urge to jump to conclusions. When you encounter something new or an old problem in a new light, your expert brain will instantly try to categorize it based on past experience. A beginner's mind intentionally pauses that process. It says, let me observe this fully before I decide what it is. This pause creates space for novel interpretations.
It's like giving your brain a chance to see the forest and the trees instead of just the forest you've always seen.
That's a fantastic analogy, and it's particularly valuable when you're collaborating. When team members bring different levels of expertise or different perspectives, it naturally fosters a beginner's mindset for everyone involved. Someone who's new to a project can ask the basic questions that the veterans overlook. New team members can challenge long-held assumptions without baggage.
So, fostering a beginner's mind isn't just about individual creativity, it's also about building more innovative and adaptable teams.
Absolutely. When we bring a beginner's mind to our work, to our relationships, even to how we interact with the world around us, we open ourselves up to continuous learning and discovery. We become more resilient to change because we're always in a state of learning. We're less likely to be blindsided by unexpected events because we're trained to observe and question.
It sounds like a superpower for originality, really. It helps us break out of those conventional patterns we talked about.
It truly is. It's about consciously choosing to cultivate wonder, to remain teachable, and to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. It's about recognizing that expertise can sometimes be a barrier to seeing new possibilities.
So, to recap, cultivating a beginner's mind means approaching situations with the curiosity of a newcomer, asking why, resisting assumptions, and being open to new discoveries. It's a practice that counters the limitations of expertise and fosters continuous learning, both for ourselves and in our teams.
You've summarized it perfectly, Lisa. Remember, the next time you encounter a familiar situation, try to consciously adopt that beginner's mindset. You might be surprised at what you discover.
It's such a valuable concept. I'm definitely going to be practicing this.
Wonderful. Next time, we'll explore how to navigate the resistance that often arises when we introduce new or original ideas. Next episode, navigating resistance to new ideas. Welcome back to Think Original. Last time we explored the transformative power of cultivating a beginner's mind.
Absolutely, Alex. That beginner's mind is such a crucial tool for sparking originality. It helps us notice things others miss, and it opens us up to possibilities we might otherwise overlook. But as we venture into truly original territory, we inevitably run into something that can derail our creative momentum: resistance.
That's precisely what we're diving into today. We're navigating resistance to new ideas. This resistance can come from many places, from within ourselves and from the world around us. It's a common and often powerful obstacle to innovation.
So let's break that down. What are the main kinds of resistance we encounter when we try to introduce something new or think differently?
I think we can categorize it into two main buckets: internal resistance and external resistance. Internal resistance is that voice in your head, the one that whispers doubts. It's things like fear of failure, the comfort of the familiar, or the worry of looking foolish.
Ah, the inner critic. I know that one well. It's that feeling of, what if this doesn't work out? What if I'm wrong? It's much safer to stick with what I know.
Exactly. And this ties back beautifully to our discussion on embracing creative constraints. Sometimes the biggest constraint we face is our own psychological comfort zone. The familiar feels safe, predictable. Stepping into the unknown with a truly original idea feels inherently risky. This fear of failure is a powerful anchor holding us back.
So, that internal resistance is often rooted in a desire for security or predictability. How do we overcome that? How do we quiet that inner voice of doubt?
One key strategy is to reframe failure. Instead of seeing failure as an endpoint, view it as a learning opportunity. Think of it as data collection. If an idea doesn't pan out, you've learned valuable information about what doesn't work, which brings you closer to what does. Remember our discussion on first principles? Breaking down a belief to its fundamental truths helps us understand it. Failure, in a way, is a fundamental truth about the experimental process.
That's a great perspective shift. So, instead of "I failed," It becomes, I've discovered a pathway that doesn't lead to the desired outcome.
Precisely. Another tactic is to start small. Don't feel the need to launch a radical, world-changing idea all at once. Prototype it, test elements of it, and gather feedback on a smaller scale. This builds confidence and reduces the perceived risk. It's like dipping your toe in the water before you dive in.
That makes sense. So, for internal resistance, it's about managing our own psychology, reframing failure, and taking iterative steps. Now, what about external resistance? That's when others push back on our ideas, right?
Yes, this can be even more daunting. External resistance can come from colleagues, supervisors, customers, or even society at large. People are often resistant to new ideas because they are comfortable with the status quo. The existing system works for them, and change can seem disruptive, unnecessary, or even threatening.
It's like they're invested in the current way of doing things, and our new idea challenges that investment. You mentioned skepticism. What does that look like in practice?
Skepticism might manifest as a barrage of questions focused on the downsides, a dismissal of potential benefits, or outright rejection without deep consideration. People might say things like, "That's how we've always done it," or "It's too risky," or "It won't work."
So, how do we, as originators of these new ideas, respond effectively to that external pushback? We can't just get defensive, can we?
Getting defensive is the quickest way to shut down a conversation and solidify resistance. The key is to remain calm, empathetic, and strategic. First, really listen to understand the root of their concern. Often, resistance isn't malicious. It's driven by genuine apprehension. Ask clarifying questions. What specifically do they see as the risk? Were there concerns about the current process working or not working?
So, it's about active listening and trying to see the issue from their perspective, even if we fundamentally disagree.
Exactly. Then, you need to connect your idea to their needs or goals. How does your original idea, even with its potential uncertainties, ultimately benefit them or the organization? Frame it in terms of shared objectives. Remember our discussion on the art of diverse inputs? You need to incorporate different perspectives to make your idea robust. Their concerns are actually valuable inputs.
That's a really important point, Alex. Their skepticism isn't just an obstacle, it's feedback. If we can address their underlying concerns or show how our idea solves their problem, we can start to build bridges.
Absolutely. And sometimes you need to be an advocate for your idea. This involves calmly and confidently presenting the evidence, the logic, and the potential benefits you've identified. You might need to repeat yourself, frame the idea in different ways, and provide concrete examples or data points. This is where the lessons on questioning assumptions are critical. We need to question the assumptions behind their resistance.
So, it sounds like a multi-pronged approach. We need to manage our internal fears, listen empathetically to external concerns, connect our ideas to their needs, and then confidently advocate for what we believe in, backed by solid reasoning.
You've summarized it perfectly, Lisa. Navigating resistance is a critical skill for anyone who wants to think and act more originally. It requires resilience, patience, and a deep understanding of both our own psychology and the dynamics of persuasion.
It really highlights how innovation isn't just about having a brilliant idea. It's also about the process of bringing that idea to life in the real world, where it will inevitably be met with some friction.
And that friction, when handled skillfully, can actually strengthen the idea and make its eventual success even more impactful. It forces us to refine our thinking and ensure our ideas are truly robust.
So, to recap, we talked about internal resistance, which often stems from fear of failure and the comfort of the familiar. Strategies here involve reframing failure as learning and starting with smaller, iterative steps. Then we discussed external resistance, which comes from others who are comfortable with the status quo. To navigate this, we need to listen actively, understand their concerns, connect our ideas to their needs, and then advocate for our ideas with confidence and evidence.
Exactly. And these strategies will be essential as we move into the later stages of bringing our original thinking to life. This is where we really put those earlier lessons on embracing constraints and gathering diverse inputs to the test.
It's all starting to weave together, isn't it? From understanding our own thinking patterns to actively championing new ideas.
It is. And in our next episode, we'll be exploring the exciting process of the synthesis of ideas, how seemingly disparate concepts can come together to form something entirely new.
I can't wait. So, for episode 10, the synthesis of ideas.
Welcome back to Think Original. Today, we're diving deep into the synthesis of ideas.
Synthesis. That sounds like bringing things together to create something new. We've gathered so many individual sparks of originality. Now it's about weaving them into something bigger.
Exactly, Lisa. Think of it like this. We've gathered a fantastic collection of colorful threads throughout this series. We've explored how to find those threads through originality by questioning our defaults, posing what-if scenarios, embracing constraints, diverse inputs, and deconstructing complex problems with first principles. We've even learned how to keep our minds open through questioning assumptions and cultivating a beginner's mind, and how to push past resistance when those new ideas surface. Now, synthesis is where we take all those beautiful individual threads and weave them into a rich, intricate tapestry.
So, it's not just about having a lot of ideas, but about seeing how they can connect and complement each other?
Precisely. It's about realizing that the most groundbreaking innovations often come not from a single, bolt from the blue insight, but from the thoughtful combination of existing concepts. Remember when we talked about diverse inputs in episode 5? Synthesis is the active process of taking those diverse inputs and finding the unexpected links between them. It's about moving beyond simply collecting information to actively creating new meaning by connecting the dots.
That makes sense. It's like a chef who doesn't just have a pantry full of ingredients, but knows how to combine them in surprising and delightful ways.
A perfect analogy. And how do we, as individuals, become better at this idea synthesis? One key method is pattern recognition. We need to train ourselves to look for recurring themes, similar structures, or underlying principles across different fields or concepts.
So, if I'm working on a marketing campaign for a new product, I might look for patterns in how successful products in completely different industries have been launched.
Absolutely. Or let's say you're a software developer encountering a new type of user interface challenge. You might remember a pattern from your experience with designing physical products, or even from observing how nature solves a similar problem. It's about asking, where have I seen something like this before, and what can I learn from that context?
That brings to mind episode 6 about deconstructing problems with first principles. If we understand the fundamental elements of a problem, we can then look for those fundamental elements in other areas to find connections.
You're absolutely right. First principles give us a clear lens to see the underlying building blocks, making it easier to spot analogous structures elsewhere. Synthesis is the act of taking those first principles and seeing how they apply, or can be combined with, principles from other domains. It's about building bridges between disparate ideas.
How do we encourage those bridge building moments? Sometimes ideas feel so separate, it's hard to imagine them ever meeting.
One powerful way is through analogical thinking. We touched on this before, but let's really emphasize it. When you encounter a new concept or problem, consciously ask yourself, what does this remind me of? What other situations or systems operate in a similar way? For example, if you're thinking about managing a complex project, you might draw an analogy to conducting an orchestra or even to the way ants organize their colony. Each sounds very different, but they all involve coordination, leadership, and managing many moving parts.
So, it's about finding the underlying mechanics that are shared, even if the surface details are very different.
Precisely. And this isn't always a straightforward, logical process. Sometimes synthesis happens serendipitously or through deliberate, even playful experimentation. This is where the iterative nature of creative thinking comes in, which we'll explore more in our next episode on prototyping. But for synthesis, it means not being afraid to playfully combine ideas, even if they seem absurd at first.
Playful experimentation, that sounds less intimidating than trying to force a connection.
Exactly. Imagine you have two random objects, say a teacup and a bicycle. On their own, they're just objects. But what if you start asking, what if the teacup was part of the bicycle? What if the bicycle was made of teacups? You might not get a practical invention immediately, but you're stimulating your brain to think about new relationships, new forms, and new functions. This mental stretching is crucial for synthesis.
So, we're actively looking for ways to merge or blend concepts. It's not just noticing similarities, but actively trying to create something new from the fusion.
Yes, and this leads us to the concept of emergent properties. When you combine two or more things, the resulting combination can have qualities or abilities that none of the original parts possessed on their own. Think of water. It's made of hydrogen and oxygen, both gases. But when combined, they form a liquid with entirely new properties. In the world of ideas, synthesis is what creates these emergent properties.
That's a fantastic way to put it. We're looking for that more than the sum of its parts effect.
It is. And this process is inherently iterative and requires refinement. You'll combine ideas, see what emerges, evaluate it, and then refine your combinations or even go back to gather more diverse inputs. It's rarely a one and done situation. You might also find that while synthesizing, you uncover gaps in your understanding or areas where you need more information. This is a positive outcome as it guides your further exploration.
So, synthesis isn't just about creation, but also about discovery and further learning. It loops back on itself.
It absolutely does. To recap, the art of synthesizing ideas involves actively seeking out patterns across different domains, using analogical thinking to find shared structures and mechanics, engaging in playful experimentation to combine concepts, and understanding that synthesis can lead to emergent properties, new qualities that arise from the combination. This is all about building bridges between existing knowledge and creating something entirely novel from those connections.
It's about seeing the potential for innovation not just in a single brilliant idea, but in the fertile ground found where many different ideas can meet and interact.
Precisely. And this mindful connection making is a skill that can be developed and strengthened with practice. By consistently looking for patterns, making analogies, and playfully combining concepts, we train our brains to be more adept at synthesis.
So we have all these wonderful pieces, the original spark, understanding ourselves, asking what if, using constraints, gathering diverse inputs, breaking things down with first principles, questioning assumptions, a beginner's mind, and navigating resistance. Now we're learning to weave them together.
And that weaving is essential for true innovation. It's where the magic really happens. Next time, we'll discuss how to take these synthesized ideas and start bringing them into the tangible world by prototyping. Next episode, prototyping your originality. Welcome back. Last time we discussed the synthesis of ideas. Today, we're prototyping your originality.
Ideas are potential until we make them real. Prototyping is about making abstract thoughts tangible, even in a rough form, to test them.
Exactly. A prototype doesn't need to be perfect. It's a working model to reveal what works and what doesn't. Think of it as an architect's basic structural sketch.
So, it's not about creating a polished product. It's about getting something out there that others can interact with to gather feedback and learn. This connects to the concept of asking what if, to generate possibilities, as we discussed earlier. Prototyping answers those questions concretely.
Absolutely. The what if stage generates possibilities, and prototyping gives them form. For a new app idea, instead of coding entirely, you might create a clickable wireframe. This lets users experience the flow, revealing user experience insights.
I can picture that. Instead of just saying, wouldn't it be cool if, you're showing people, you click here and this happens. That sparks more specific feedback.
Precisely. This interaction reveals flaws or suggests features we never considered. This process directly applies the synthesizing principles from our last episode, blending your original idea with new insights from others' perspectives.
Could you give an example outside of digital products, Alex? Something more hands-on?
Certainly, if you're a baker with a new cake flavor idea, you don't bake a dozen elaborate cakes. You bake a few small test cakes, or even just a batch of the frosting or filling.
Ah, so those smaller test cakes are your prototypes. You can taste them yourself or share them with trusted friends for their opinions.
Exactly. You might discover the flavors are overwhelming together or clash in an unexpected way. Or a friend might suggest, this is amazing, but a hint of lime zest would make it even better. That's crucial feedback for iterating on your original concept.
So, the prototype isn't just about proving an idea is good, it's about finding how to make it better. It's a learning tool. This ties into cultivating a beginner's mind. When we prototype, we approach our ideas with a fresh perspective, ready to learn.
That's a fantastic connection, Lisa. Embracing the beginner's mind means we're less defensive and more open to refining our initial spark through practical experimentation. Remember questioning assumptions? Prototyping tests those assumptions about user interaction and function.
It's like taking an abstract idea and giving it a physical form, even a temporary one. This could be a drawing, a clay model, a script, or even a clear verbal explanation of a service. The key is it's concrete enough to be examined.
And the more concrete it is, the more specific the feedback. For a writer, a prototype might be a synopsis or sample chapters. For a musician, a melody sketch or demo recording. It's about moving from pure thought to tangible experience.
This makes innovation feel less daunting. We imagine creators having perfect ideas, but original thinking is a journey. Prototyping is a critical stop where we build, test, and learn from our creations.
It's embracing imperfection as a step toward improvement. The fear of not getting it right can paralyze us. Prototyping combats that fear by making getting it wrong valuable. It's an invitation to experiment and discover.
So, to recap, prototyping allows us to first test our assumptions, second, gather feedback, and third, learn and iterate. It bridges abstract thought and concrete reality, vital for bringing new ideas to life.
And in doing so, you develop yourself as an original thinker, learning to be adaptable, accept criticism, and see failures as signposts. This is the practical application of our discussions.
It's incredibly empowering. Don't keep brilliant thoughts locked away. Find a way to give them form, share them, and see where it leads. That's prototyping your originality.
Well said, Lisa. That brings us to the end of episode 11. Next time, we wrap up the series by focusing on how to sustain this original mindset long term.
Join us for the final episode, Sustaining the Original Mindset.
Welcome back to Think Original. This is episode 12, the final episode. Today, we focus on keeping that spark of originality alive and making pattern-breaking thinking an everyday habit.
That's right, Alex. We've covered so many powerful ideas, from understanding our default settings to synthesizing new concepts. This final episode is about practical steps to ensure our growth continues. It's about sustaining that original mindset.
Exactly. Think of it like building a muscle. It requires consistent effort. The same applies to originality. We learned about identifying and questioning our default settings in episode 2. Remember how we talked about automatic behaviors?
I do. We compared it to a computer's default settings. You often have to change them manually. The key takeaway was to pause and ask, is this the best way? Is there another possibility? Applying that habit daily is fundamental to staying original.
Absolutely. And that leads into our principle from episode 5, the art of diverse inputs. If you only consume information from one perspective, your thinking becomes narrow. To think originally, you need a rich tapestry of ideas to draw from.
So, to sustain originality, we must actively seek out experiences, articles, and conversations that challenge our viewpoints. It's about feeding our minds with a wide variety of fuel, not just the same old stuff. Having a diverse palette of ingredients makes creating something new much richer.
Precisely. And don't forget the power of first principles thinking from episode 7. Instead of mimicking others, this involves breaking a problem down to its fundamental truths, then building solutions from the ground up.
Yes. We use the example of inventors not just making faster horses, but thinking about transportation's core need to develop the automobile. This prevents getting stuck in incremental improvements and opens the door for groundbreaking ideas.
So, to recap these pillars for sustained originality. First, consistently question your default settings, as in episode 2. Ask, why do I do it this way? Is there a better way? Second, actively cultivate diverse inputs, as in episode 5. Seek out new perspectives.
And third, continue to practice first principles thinking, like in episode 7. Strip challenges back to core truths and build from there. These are ongoing practices that build momentum.
That's a fantastic summary, Lisa. Extending this, remember episode 3 and the power of what if questions? This is a direct tool for sustaining originality. Don't just accept the situation. Ask, what if this were different? What if X wasn't a factor? This fuels experimentation.
That really unlocks innovation. It's like giving yourself permission to explore the impossible. And that ties in with embracing creative constraints from episode 4. Limitations can actually force us to be more inventive.
Exactly. It's about being resourceful within the resources you have. And this is where prototyping from episode 11 becomes so important for sustainability. Original ideas can feel intimidating. Prototyping, creating a small, tangible version, allows you to test and iterate without massive risk.
So, we're not just thinking originally, we're doing it and learning. It's a cycle of making, testing, and refining. This cycle helps us navigate resistance to new ideas, as explored in episode 9. When you have a working prototype or a clear application of first principles, it's easier to advocate for change.
That's insightful, Lisa. Tangible evidence from prototyping can overcome doubt. And don't underestimate cultivating a beginner's mind from episode 8. Approaching challenges with curiosity and a willingness to learn, rather than expert certainty, is vital for spotting opportunities others miss.
The beginner's mind is about humility and openness. It allows us to see things with fresh eyes, even in familiar situations. And that connects beautifully with questioning assumptions, revisited in episode 7. When we think we know everything, we stop seeing possibilities.
It all weaves together. Sustaining originality isn't a single trick. It's about integrating a set of practices into your daily life. It's about creating an environment where new ideas can be born and thrive.
So, to make this sustainable, we need routines. For example, dedicating time each week to reading outside your field or brainstorming what if scenarios about a project. Little by little, these actions compound.
Absolutely. Think about making it a personal challenge. Could you try a new route to work once a month? Could you strike up a conversation with someone whose job is completely different from yours? Small, deliberate acts of stepping outside your comfort zone are powerful. And remember episode 10, the synthesis of ideas? The more diverse inputs you have, the more unexpected and valuable connections you can make.
The synthesis episode really highlighted how original ideas emerge from combining seemingly unrelated concepts. So, the more diverse inputs we have, the richer our mental palette becomes for these syntheses. It's a continuous loop of input, connection, and creation.
And that, my friends, is the essence of living an original life. It's not about being brilliant all the time, but about consistently engaging with the world in a way that allows new perspectives and solutions to emerge. It's about embracing the journey of discovery.
It's a mindset shift that truly transforms how we approach everything. We've covered a lot of ground, and I hope our listeners feel empowered to continue this journey. Remember, originality isn't a rare gift, it's a cultivated skill.
Well said, Lisa. We've explored sparking originality, unmasking defaults, harnessing what if, embracing constraints, diversifying inputs, using first principles, questioning assumptions, cultivating a beginner's mind, navigating resistance, synthesizing ideas, prototyping, and finally sustaining that original mindset. This is the end of our series, but it's just the beginning of your original thinking future.
Thank you so much for joining us on Think Original. We've truly enjoyed guiding you through these principles. Keep questioning, keep creating, and keep thinking originally.
Thanks for listening to the series.